Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The GOAT. Yes, The GOAT, episode 32. We've done 32 of these. I can't believe
32.
that. Travis, man, I'm impressed. I didn't think I'd be able to hold out this long, but I'm enjoying it.
I'm curious to know on the very end of the intro, is that you running on that track?
Actually, I'm pumping iron in one of those. So, they just got my guns, but
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure. So look kind of like you from the behind, but
hey, so 38 episodes was set up on the top. Oh, never mind. I stand corrected. I thought it was 32. So 38 episodes. Now you're impressed, right, Travis?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Travis, I got a question right now. What do you think about the Chiefs? We're 3-3.
What Chiefs? Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a I don't want to be a fair weather fan. I still watch, but they're just not the same team as they were in the last 2 years. But that's okay. That's okay.
What do you
So
think's different? What do you think's making the difference for you?
I think the locker room's probably a problem right now for some reason. I'd like to be a fly on the wall in that locker room and hear some of those conversations that take place. I think there's some dissension amongst the ranks, and I think there's some leadership issues right now.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And with that said, what do you think needs to happen? Do you think they're going to be able to turn it around?
This season, not so sure, but could be wrong. Um,
Yeah.
I think that the expectations probably set really high again, and as soon as a few bad things started happening and some mistakes were made, and those expectations that they set for themselves may not be as clear and present as they were before, and maybe they're starting to point fingers and blame each other for some of that now.
Right.
So
I think that happens in the professional ranks, and it's happening big with the fans and everybody. We need to do this. You need to do this. Get rid of
sure,
Reed. Get rid of this. It's like,
sure.
really? We're starting the season. We're meshing. We're starting to gel. I think that we have a good chance at pulling it together because I see the offense starting to lead. Some of the leaders, Tyreek is coming back, and we got Travis doing things, and you
Mhm.
get Travis, Patrick, and Tyreek leading that team, I think, and Chris Jones.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we got a guest today that I'm so excited to talk about, Tony Hofmann, and he is an endurance athlete. He is director of public works for OP, founder of Team Leadville, author of, I believe, Dig Deep and Finding Your Grit or Application of Grit or something like that. I'm so excited. He's an endurance athlete, West Point grad, qualified Army Ranger, retired colonel, author of and founder of Team Leadville, a high altitude marathon team with a unified mission of ending veteran suicide, run during the 100-mile endurance race in Colorado. He's ran 13 consecutive Boston marathons. He just completed one a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And he is the epitome of a goat, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most mentally challenging sports out there is running marathons and ultra marathons and trail running and these things that he's done. The Boston Marathon is a qualifying marathon. Just not anybody can enter that, so you have to achieve a certain time based on your age. So these types of sports and these types of athletes have what we're really looking for as far as mental toughness and mindset with our folks. So you can get into the mind of an ultra marathoner like Tony and understand how he does it and talking about grit. Then I think we all can learn some lessons from that.
Oh boy, every one of us, especially like imagine your high school, if you're able to push that marker, this is my self-imposed line of all I can achieve. If you're able to push that farther and run through that pain and use your
Hmm.
mental to get through that, it's amazing what you can achieve. So I'm so excited. Julie, let's bring Tony on. Tony, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Travis, how are you?
Good, Tony. Good.
We're doing great. Welcome to the GOAT.
Thanks. Great to be on. Love the show and honored to be part of it.
Well, I am so excited to hear. I'm going to dig into the stuff that interests me. I'm a performance coach, a mindset guy, and this is an area that just intrigues me. So you've spent, though, we were talking about how do you be consistent? How do you stick with it when you don't want to? All those kinds of things. You started out your career, probably your life, I don't know, because you went into the military fairly early, but it's very disciplined, very regimented, and then you went into the military, very disciplined, very regimented. Is that a big asset to you being able to compete?
Yeah, Jeff, Travis, I think, to be honest, I think my background, where I came from, had a lot to do with maybe the military maybe augmented that. Small town, Minnesota, graduating class of 34, great parents, father, small business that's still in. He passed away in 1984, but the business in a town of 715 people is still in today. It may be the oldest transmission shop, definitely one in Minnesota, if not the nation. My mother grew up in Germany, born in Germany, came over at age 18. Father was obviously German, was killed in World War II. My mother eventually married my father and came over to the U.S. But point being, I think my parents played a key role in maybe that formation. And it really took me here in the last 5-6 years to really probably realize that. Both my parents have deceased, but they grew up pretty tough. And they were not saying they were tough on me. They were it was a disciplined household, but not in a bad way. And I think a lot of that, frankly, has helped along the way for some of these tougher endeavors that you challenge yourself to do, Jeff and Travis.
Right. And for some reason, and I don't know why, but you like to challenge yourself to these really tough endeavors. First, have you ever been diagnosed with anything? No.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, what makes someone want to do that?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, a part of it is I look at, say, racing, marathon. I've been marathoning since November of 1990. So I'm entering my 4th decade. And I'm very blessed I'm 55, to still be able to do that because it's a fairly tough event, that and the ultras. But I think part of it is I look at it as you're only as good as your last race. I think it's good to look back on maybe, if you want to call it an achievement. I'm not sure I really look at those as achievements per se. You got to love what you do. That's probably first and foremost. But then I look at it as
how do you love the pain? How do you love that pain?
I think you get accustomed to it, and it is a challenge. And I think the lesson learned for probably your listeners with respect to grit and building that is, it can be taught over time through probably actions that you take. In other words, it just doesn't happen overnight. You almost have to experience a couple really, in this case, tough races, get through it, that you then learn and continue to go from there. So it's not something, I think there are a few that probably could just roll out and do it and find, wow, they had it. But I'm a believer that it comes through action. It comes through the discipline of working through it. Now, there's a big difference between, pain and working through something where you're going to have probably permanent damage versus, okay, this is just part of it. Like the marathon, the last 5 to 6 miles of a marathon is going to be painful, even if you're well trained. And I think going through that process multiple times, so you kind of know what to expect. That can be good and bad. But back to your original question, what drives you? For me, I don't want to rest on my laurels. My time's maybe getting a bit slower as I age, but you're still challenging yourself. I still have recently have had some very good races, yet somebody that looked at the overall time would say, well, yeah, you've really gotten slower. I don't look at it that way. I look at it the effort and to get through it and to continue to do it. But I think I don't want to rest on my laurels. You're only as good as your last race or event, and to continue to try to get better and better, even though your times may not show it, you're still
Right.
out there competing and fighting and doing the training and doing different things in the training to allow yourself not to be injured, to get to the start line, etc. So I look at it
All
as
of
an
that.
overall challenge. A lot of people don't see the time that goes in. They see the end result with a race, maybe, but what they don't realize is, say for a Boston train up, a 16-week train up, that's 550 miles or more that goes
Right.
into that, roughly, depending on your time, 3 to 4 hour race. So there's a lot of things that's the race itself is
Yeah.
kind of the dessert, so to speak. It's getting to the race that really
Right.
is where the challenge lies. Not that the race isn't challenging, but you've got to
Right.
give yourself the best opportunity to perform, and that requires effort and grit and persistence and a plan. So anyway,
Well, there's two kinds of grit in that situation. One is the grit to prepare,
yeah,
and then the grit to overcome the pain that's inevitable. Because like you said, the pain is going to happen to everybody at a certain point in a marathon. It's, can I handle it? And the more you've handled it in the past, the more you can tell yourself, I can do this. I can live through this.
I agree, Jeff. I think the other thing is in training, you can put yourself maybe not in let's say it's a 3.5 hour marathon. You can put segments of that into your training to know that, okay, how are you training for specifically the last, say, 10K, 6.2 miles of a race? And you do that through specific training events, maybe not for a long duration, for short duration, so you know what that's going to kind of feel like when you get
Yeah.
into crunch time at a race. In particular, we're talking, marathoning and ultra marathoning.
So Tony, let's just say right now, because marathoning, ultra marathoning, those things are great, but that's out there for most people. That's out there, like that's a big jump.
Sure.
How do you get people to start that process? How do you get them to? Because it's not, hey, you should come run a marathon with me. But how do you get? Because you've built teams, you've created Team Leadville, you've done a lot to build your team. How do you get people interested like that?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question, Jeff. I guess I'm going to relate it less to the racing or particular event, but more to life. I think it's challenging yourself to do something that is uncommon for you. So a marathon may be very uncommon for somebody, but say a 5K might be a very big step. I think it's taking challenging yourself to put yourself on a journey that makes yourself uncomfortable,
Right.
doing the work necessary to give yourself the best chance for success,
Right.
but not knowing what that end result will be. Meaning, hey, if I pick a 1 mile run and say, well, that's very challenging, but you kind of know, hey, it's pretty easy. You can just do a 1 mile run. But that's
Right.
not really challenging yourself to do something
Right.
uncommon. And I would relate that less towards the running piece, but you had asked, how do you get somebody to do that? It's maybe convincing or in making somebody enthused to challenge themselves to do something that they hadn't done, whether it's running or woodworking, you name it, and getting themselves to buy in, owning their stuff,
Yeah.
and giving themselves the best opportunity for that success. But that requires work and
Right.
effort. And the other piece, I think we often get enamored by the end result. Well, did you finish, or what was your finishing time? Uh, um, I'm not advocating, quote unquote, not finishing something, but I think the courage lies in putting yourself on the journey to do
Yeah.
something you maybe have never done because you
Right.
don't know what that end result will be.
Right.
Hopefully, you want to finish exactly what you started, but again, you're in uncharted water. So I think it's coaching, teaching, mentoring, getting somebody enthused to maybe get off the couch on something that they maybe had always been thinking about.
Well,
Again, it doesn't have to be physical.
you didn't finish your first two Team Leadvilles, right?
Well, my first 200 mile. So I entered the 100-mile piece
Yeah.
in 2013. I signed up for the Leadville 100, which is kind of crazy. I went from the marathon distance right to the 100. And I did research on it. I didn't go in blind, but
Yeah.
I really wanted to kind of take it to a different level. I had always been enamored with Leadville. The Leadville 100 is a fairly iconic race. Leadville, by the way, is the highest incorporated U.S. city at 10,152 feet. And I did research on it, did training, but I wanted to take it to a different level and really challenge myself on something I hadn't done before. And there were a ton of lessons learned. Did not make it. I got pulled off at mile 60. You have to meet intermediate time cuts, and I didn't make the time cut past mile 60. So I never quit. That's a big deal right there. Never quit. They pulled me off the course. And then in 2014, took those lessons learned, applied, okay, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same, expecting a different result. Made some tweaks and was fortunate enough to ultimately finish that race. It's a 30-hour total cutoff, and I finished it in 29 hours and 31 minutes. But a lot of things had to go right, coming from where we are in the Kansas City area at 900 feet. A lot of things have to go right during that 30-hour event in order for you to do it as a non-elite athlete.
Dude, what is that like? 30 hours of running?
Yeah, I didn't run the whole thing. I don't think most, maybe even the elites don't run the total uphill inclines at Leadville. So a lot of it, somebody once said it's living a lifetime in a day. And I would concur with that. It is handling the lows and highs, because there are both. The other piece that's really huge that was a lot different than the marathon is the nutrition aspect. Really, for that type of endurance event, it's an eating contest with running thrown in. And you really, and what's intriguing to me on all these ultra events is you learn about yourself, you learn about the human body, you learn about the nutrition aspect with respect to the 100-mile ultras, because the nutrition piece, the first time I was pretty well trained. I thought I was mentally tough. I thought I had a good nutrition plan. And I learned that the nutrition piece plays such a huge role in those ultra distances over 26.2 miles. So what's it like? Tough, very tough. And it's really
tough.
It's able to handle your emotions along the way, not let the lows get too low or the highs get too high, and to continue to move forward. I call it RFP, relentless forward progress, because as long as you're continuing to move forward, much as you are in life, as long as you're continuing to move forward, you're making progress.
Right. So you're continuing to move forward, but your body at some point has to go somewhat numb. Like you're running 30 hours straight.
True statement. The other thing, you have temperature fluctuations. It's an August race, so starts out at 4 o'clock in the morning. Typically it's about 34 degrees, gets up to maybe 70 at the high times, and then you're back down in the evening portion. And that's when it really gets tough. I mean, it's dark. You can have a pacer after 50 miles. That can keep you kind of cognizant and safety purposes. You don't have to have one, but that's when it really gets tough, when you're out.
Did you freeze, Tony?
I think you did. His internet maybe have been an issue again.
I really wanted to hear this part.
It's interesting what he was saying. The mental preparation for these races. Now, I will tell you from personal experience. 2006, I ran one, and no doubt that the actual marathon was kind of the prize before I even stepped on the course, because the preparation for it was very mentally challenging. Because most people, when they say I could never run 26 miles, but when you start off little and then build up over 6 months, and I trained for 6 months, and it started off I couldn't run 2 or 3 miles, and then as I built my my stamina, my endurance up over time. I'd be able to add a mile, and keep adding time and keep adding and keep
Right.
adding to where I was in the best shape, probably the best shape I've ever been in. And, those last few months, I mean, I can eat a cheeseburger and gain 15 pounds. I was eating 6 cheeseburgers and losing weight. I mean,
Right.
you completely the way your body processes calories and the nutrition he was talking about, super important. And I see what he means, because along those courses, I mean, you are burning so many calories. And
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
if you're not refueling, you're gonna collapse. And like you said, asking him about his body being numb, your brain you can train your brain to be so mentally tough that you're gonna go. But
Right.
if your body physically will not allow you to do so, in which that can happen. And something
That's where
that's
we were going. That's where
yeah,
it's like, I have never been to that point.
right.
I have never been to my brain shuts down or my body shuts down
Hmm.
physically. And I think they get to that point and are able to go through it.
Yeah. It does definitely. If I had to look back over all the sports I played over all the years and some of the great wins and some of the tragic losses, I'd say from an individual standpoint, that was probably one of my life's greatest accomplishments
Yeah.
was achieving that. Only 10% of the people in the world complete a marathon, and that's a big accomplishment, to be in a 10% of the world's population, somebody that's completed it. And what was cool about it is when I set out to do it from the very beginning, I thought to myself, I just want to finish it. I just want to finish it. But what I had found through that rigorous training regimen, and just getting tougher and tougher along the way, about the last month, I decided I was going to actually now try and make a certain time.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I was 30, mid to late 30s at the time. And I looked up the qualifying time for me to run into Boston. And it was
Uh-huh.
3 hours and 52 minutes. So that was my goal, to make 3 hours and 52 minutes. And I didn't make it, but I did it in 4:01.
Wow.
But I was pacing for 5 hours when I first started. So I took an hour off my time, or what I thought was going to be my projected time early on, to get to that 4:01. And then they give you where you finish on men your age. And I think there was 6,000 men that ran my age, and I finished like 800 and something.
Wow.
So yeah, or not, there were 6,000 people total, and I finished somewhere in 700 or 800 range, something like that. So I was pretty happy about that. So, and
Oh,
I've never been a runner. Look at me. I'm not.
yeah.
I'm short and stocky.
Right. Right.
So it really does speak volumes to the mental preparation. I think Tony really, really talked about it, about that grit piece mentally. How I think you can become mentally tougher through an act while you are in that process, when your heart rate's up, while you're putting one foot in front of the
Right.
other. You can change your mental frame of mind and your emotional standpoint through that journey. We want to be mentally tough as performance coaches. We're teaching people over the course of a season, over the course of a few years in their life, but these folks are doing it on the course, and they're
Yeah.
going through. He spoke that eloquently. You have to manage the emotional lows and manage the
Yes.
emotional highs. So there's no doubt. So
You're
we had
exactly
you.
right,
We
Tony.
took care of you.
Thank you.
Boy, we summed up where you were going. I can't even remember where that was, Travis. Can you?
Yeah. So we were talking about one foot in front of the other, and you had mentioned
Yeah.
to Tony that then your body just go numb. And I had mentioned to you while we were trying to get him back, the brain can be very mentally tough. Tony spoke about it so eloquently, as during the course of the race. In Tony, I was sharing with Jeff about my process. I ran a marathon in 06, and I talked about the fact that I've never ever run. I've never a distance runner. I mean, look at me. I'm short and stocky. I mean, but it was something that I wanted to accomplish, and the change in perspective and the growth mentally through that 6 months of training, and being able to start off saying I can't run 2 miles to running the whole thing, and trying to compete for time to qualify for Boston. I mean, that was a complete frame of mind shift. But you also talk about, and I was talking about this with Jeff, is during the actual course, managing, wow, you kind of get that runner's high. You could probably speak on what a runner's high is, but there's a runner's low too. And, you know, for me, like mile 14 through about 21 was my low.
Yeah.
I was great in the first half and I was great on the last 5, but right there in the middle, I struggled mightily. And, but in any event, I had mentioned to Jeff, was one of the most grueling, mentally challenging things, but it was one of the greatest accomplishments I've had in my athletic career, you know, since I've been young. So anyway, glad to have you back.
Yeah, sorry. One of the, you know, talking about that, one of my biggest lessons learned was during the 2013 100-miler on the backside of what's called Hope Pass. Absolutely brutal part of the course. You're entering from 50 to 55 miles. It is you're going back up to 12,600 feet. But I remember having a conversation with myself to even get back on the course at mile 50. I was ready to quit. And I talked to a 20-something-year-old guy named Zach, and he said, yeah, I'm having a tough day too, but they're going to have to cut this wristband off me, because at the time it was wristband. And that kind of motivated me.
Wow.
But on the backside of Hope Pass, I distinctly recall these 2 other runners, and they were from Phoenix, and we were leapfrogging each other, and they were struggling just as bad as I was. But when we got to the top, there was an aid station, and they calmly got some food, went to utilize the restroom in the wood line, and came back. And essentially, I learned so much from just watching them. I was like, how can these guys do that? I was struggling just as much as they were. But one, they never lost their cool. Travis mentioned the mental piece of really staying calm. They got food, which is huge, because if you don't have the nutrition, then the mind starts to go. What I learned is the mind will go before the body goes.
Yeah.
Great point.
And when you lose that piece, that's when things can really start to go south.
Right.
So especially for those ultra runs where the nutrition plays a bigger role than even the marathon, because the marathon's all about getting sugar fast for a speed race. For the ultra, you want to burn fat, and you need to continue to fuel. It's essentially a fire, and you got to keep adding a log to the fire. Once you let that fire go out during that, that's when you start having trouble, because you haven't kept on the nutrition piece. So anyway, the big key piece: calm, handle the lows, get nutrition, and live to fight another to the next aid station.
Tell me about handle the lows, because that's the mental piece that, when it comes down to it, we can say handle them, but what does that mean in that situation?
Yeah, one, it's being cognizant enough to know that, hey, I need to take some more fuel in. The other thing is self-talk. I think during it as well is huge, to say, look, you just got to keep moving and give yourself the best opportunity. Oftentimes we think of, well, I need to get to the end, and I'm 50 miles in and I got 50 miles to go. If you start thinking that way, it becomes such an insurmountable distance. You just got to pick it apart a little bit at a time and keep making progress.
Beautiful.
Maybe it's to the next aid station. Maybe it's just to the next tree. But maybe it's to the next runner, and try to get to that. It's incremental efforts that continue to move forward. So mentally, you don't take yourself out of the game thinking, "Well, I got 50 miles. I'm already 50 miles in. This is insurmountable." Then you start thinking mentally it's too hard, and that's where you probably have a DNF or quitting. So I think a variety of those factors. But again, I learned that the hard way. On the backside of Hope Pass, because I had a marathon mentality going into a 100-mile race, and they're totally different animals on how you need to tackle them, at least from my perspective.
Oh yeah, totally. I worked with Ironmen versus marathoners, and it's just a different mindset, because you're going for so long.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fuel enough.
Absolutely.
Michael Phelps, do you remember when Michael Phelps was training at his peak? He had to have like 13 pounds of salmon, and he had to continue eating, and it was scary what he had to eat a day. You would look at 24 eggs, nuts. But to be able to do that with your body, you're burning that fast. So Tony, I got to know.
You can't take in enough calories for that kind of race.
Right. So one thing that I want to know before we have to cut off, I want to know your most challenging memory as far as hitting the wall or having to overcome or your biggest challenge. What was that for you?
You know, the race that sticks out to me is one that you would have never heard of. It was 2018, Titusville, Pennsylvania. It was my last chance to try to keep my streak alive at Boston. I needed a qualifier. It had been the 2018 Boston Marathon was the worst weather conditions of the history of the race. I didn't re-qualify there. Couldn't find a race. It was really hot summer. I was going to Rochester, Minnesota over Memorial Day. They canceled the race as I was en route in Des Moines, Iowa. So finally I said to myself, I'm just going to have to give up. I'm not going to find a qualifier. I had one last chance, Titusville, Pennsylvania, a race in August that I needed a qualifier for in September. But anyway, the point is, it ended up being 94 degrees and about 96% humidity. I was at mile 24, and I literally, a guy I had been running with, didn't know him, but he dropped far back at about mile 21. He had been having a really good pace. He dropped. And at that point, it was probably the hardest finish I've ever had for a race. I wanted to quit. Was still taking in water and stuff like that. I ended up really just gutting it out because what went through my mind is, hey, just keep going, push yourself. And I ended up making it by 90 seconds.
Wow.
But it's a race I rarely talk about. You'd have to look it up. It's a really small marathon, but getting through that was of all the races, that one really sticks out in terms of really, really gutting it out at the end when you really, the conditions were just really difficult. So that one really stuck out to me.
That's your Super Bowl. That's like you had to make it. That was your opportunity.
Yeah.
I have to know what you ran the Boston in.
Well, which one? This recently?
Yeah.
Well, I ran, so my worst time ever, 4:05. And so why I say that, going in, I had no excuses. I had 4 spinal injections, epidural spinal injections since July. And the last one was on August 23rd. So I had 6 weeks of training to get to the start line of that race, Travis. I was very, that time may not be indicative. I was very proud to get to the start line and finish, knowing that back in August, I didn't think it was going to happen. So time this year, not very good, but the conditions of getting there, I was very proud of myself for putting the 6 weeks of work in that I could just to get the start line and finish it. Yeah.
Jeff, do you remember what I told you when we were trying to get him back? I was proud of myself for running the one and only marathon at 35 at 4:01. He just made me look like a fool.
Well, I'm kind of to myself kind of embarrassed of the time. I could have broke 4, but to be honest with you, Jeff and Travis, at that point, I went out at a Boston Marathon pace for 10K. I wanted to see maybe you have that perfect day. I knew I wasn't going to be able to hold that pace for 26.2, so I backed it off, really because I wanted to recover faster. I could have broke 4. I know I could have. I just didn't because I wanted the recovery time to go faster after the race, which we're at now, and I feel good. But so yeah, it's great. I was pleased with the result, although those that look at it on paper could say, wow, that time wasn't very impressive. But to get there was it was a grind for me, and that's saying a lot because I can push pretty hard.
Your
Yeah,
own personal journey is what's most important by
Yeah,
far compared to what
absolutely.
everybody else thinks. So
and you write that throughout your writings, and it's all about the process and the journey. It's
It
not
is.
about winning, it's competing against you. And you know how much work Travis and I put in trying to teach our athletes that mentality. Because if you can get athletes to think like that, it's not about winning or losing, it's about getting better, learning, getting better. What did I learn? How can I use it? And you're the epitome of that. I
Well,
truly love that.
I think, Jeff, for you and your athletes and Travis, I think it is staying with it and having a positive mindset along the way, knowing that you're going to have some setbacks along the way. Working through injuries, that's another whole different thing.
Right.
There was really, this particular cycle for me was really tough. I'd never had that kind of a serious injury. My right foot was numb for 3 to 4 months.
Right.
But you work through it, stay with it, and continue to try to do what you can. I think the other piece to be is to stay with it physically, do the things that you can do instead of just being a couch potato. If your
Right.
physician or doctor says, hey, you can still do certain things, you do those, and then let the body heal in other aspects
Right.
before you can get back to full training, because
Mhm.
there's always something you can probably do that will
Always.
help you.
I am so with you. I preach that to my athletes. So you hurt your shoulder. What are you doing for your legs? What
That's
are you
right.
doing for your mental game? What are you doing for your, yeah, there's a lot that you can be doing to work through the injury, but that's one of the biggest areas that I work with athletes a lot is injuries. I mean, it takes a toll on you. You're not
It
part of the
does.
team anymore. You feel like an outcast. You feel like you're getting so far behind. Your injuries really take the toll mentally.
They do, Jeff and Travis. I think one thing I would say for your maybe more advanced viewers, I didn't say old, more advanced like
Right,
myself, is I look at it. That's another, you'd ask, why do you keep doing it? Because I look at it as a challenge, and it's a game of adjustments, especially as you get more mature or
right,
older, as you get older, and you're required really to work other body groups, etc.,
Yeah,
to be able to get you to the start line. So that stretching or warm up that takes 10, 15 minutes, it takes more time, but in the end, it will keep you off the injury list. And
absolutely.
I try to impart that on our kids run, and our son just finished the
yeah,
marathon last weekend. I try to tell him, if I would have known my younger self what I know now, here's some of the things that you might want to put into your training
Mhm.
that I
right.
learned maybe in my 40s and 50s, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Oh boy, does it. Yeah, imparting that wisdom. It's hard to get them to hear it, especially if they're your
Yeah,
children. But
that's right. That's right.
other people listen to me.
Yeah, no, I get it. I
Your
get
kids
it.
will listen to me.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really have enjoyed it, and I could talk to you all day long. I love your mentality.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeff. Travis, great to see you.
yeah,
We got a couple books out there that folks can read about it. Um, Embracing Grit and Endurance, Teamwork, and Grit, two in the volume 1 and 2 of the Endurance and Grit series. But I'm a big believer in it. I think grit is the essence of effort. It's all about effort. And if you're giving effort, it may not always go your way, but in general, it will work out. And that would be my message to the athletes and everybody else out there. Just keep putting in the effort and
Yeah,
keep trying.
I love that, Tony. I appreciate that so much. And that might lead us to the GOAT tip, which is dig deep.
There
You
you
know
go.
what? You have had to do that for a good portion of your life. And I think that's neat, is learning to dig deep and overcoming those mental challenges and mental hurdles. And how we do that is by, in Jeff speak, own our shit.
That's right.
You know, you get real with yourself and you get real with your fears and the doubts that you're having, and you face those instead of running from them. That's going deep. That's what we do, and that's what people come to us for. Is you want to overcome any challenge, it's you got to own it. You got to go there and dig deep and get real with what's stopping you. What are the fears? How am I sabotaging?
Yeah, we talked a lot about running and things like that, but all of that transcends into your day-to-day life. Of whether you have a tough day, you grind it out. You continue to try to stay positive along the way and just get through it. And sometimes that's the best you can do. It's the best you can do. And
Yes.
sometimes that's enough. And,
Yeah.
but I'm a big believer that the physical piece does transcend into your day-to-day life, and ultimately it makes you more mentally aware and stronger.
Well, I will guarantee in my field, I've realized that exercise is the best antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication known to man.
Yes, sir.
If I can get people to start exercising on a regular basis, usually the reduction of meds happens.
Absolutely.
So, and one other thing, next week we have Mr. Cam F. Awesome, who is a boxer who fought for the national team and he tried out for the Olympics and all kinds of good stuff. I'm really excited about meeting with him. He's one of those, I'm going to get it no matter what it takes. And I love that attitude. So looking forward to meeting with him. And if anybody's looking for any support out there, mental health, coaching, please reach out to the Triumph program. We're here for you. We do a free consult and we would love to either work with you or steer you in the right direction. So thanks again for watching The GOAT. Tony, you're a rock star. Travis, I love you. And we'll see you all next week on The GOAT.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Bye.